sure we all had our lives flipped upside down beginning 2020 with COVID and the subsequent lockdown. I started that year with high hopes. It was my second semester of my freshman year in high school, and I was ready to begin a new chapter of my life and reinvent myself. I had no idea that on one fateful Tuesday, a YouTube video would be the reason why I had my first existential crisis at just 14 years old. I'm sure many of us can relate to in our shared experience in pondering over the classic "what is the meaning to life" question. Well, this experience has certainly made me think about that question deeply, and it made me question things even more. Today, I'll tell you how I dealt with my first existential crisis by telling you how it happened, explaining how it affected me in the weeks following, and explaining how it taught me to cherish life even more. So, let me explain what caused this. It all started when I was playing a video game, and out of nowhere, I get this sense of dread. I started to panic slightly because I wasn't sure why this was happening. It was all so sudden. I remember going on YouTube to try to calm myself and distract myself, and I remember coming across a video that showed a time lapse of the universe, showing what it would be like long after humans are gone. The various images of bleak landscapes and a lonely universe did nothing but cause fear and despair in me. The video made me think a lot about my own mortality. I began to believe that my existence meant nothing, as I would one day leave this earth, and the universe would continue like normal. Second, let me explain how it affected me. I remember that day turning off the video before it finished completely because it felt too much for me. After a while of trying to distract myself with different videos, I remember texting my friend, asking him what he did whenever he felt afraid, not telling him why exactly I was asking this question. This was completely out of nowhere for me and really out of character, but at that moment I just felt like I really needed somebody to talk to, and luckily I had my friend there. He suggested that I just try to not think about it, so that's what I tried to do. Later that same day, my dad had to go to the grocery store to buy some groceries, so I decided to go with him to distract myself. And on the way there, we started talking about things like religion and faith. My family is pretty religious, but it was extremely rare that my dad would ever talk about things like this, especially because I didn't even mention to him what was going on. Our talk did calm me down, but there was still a feeling of melancholy that lasted weeks afterwards. The next day, I remember going to school feeling miserable. The only thing on my mind was this crisis that I was going through. Even whenever I was with friends or with family, uh, I could only feel despair. I remember looking up at the sky often, wondering if we really were alone in the universe or if there was some higher being. Now, let me explain how I grew from this experience. So, this experience made me feel bad for sure, but after some time, I now realized that it probably came at a great time. Knowing that I was still young, had amazing friends, and family to support me made me feel a lot better and helped me realize that I should just worry about the present and make it as enjoyable as I can. I realized that life is way too short, so I should make an effort to make sure I am satisfied with the way I live. By telling you how I had my first existential crisis and explaining how it affected me in the weeks following, and explaining how it taught me to cherish life even more, I feel glad that I was able to experience this at a younger age than most normally would. And now I have a greater appreciation for my life and for the people and for the things around me. This really came at a great time for me since it was before COVID and the whole lockdown and isolation thing happened. So I feel like if this happened later on, I probably would have felt even worse. So yeah, that's how I overcame my first existential crisis.